process is really exciting to me.
Oh,
like the
totally.
prospect of being bad, but becoming better is exciting.
Like watching yourself, woodshed a passage and 24 hours later you pick it. Like, it's always like I spend a couple hours on something, put it away, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and it's right there. It's right there in my hands.
The first time I got a bend in the harmonica, I can't even replicate that kind of joy in my life. But I felt like I had to make a concrete decision when I was like 17 to be like, am I going to go try to get a BFA, or am I going to a musical theater BFA, or am I going to try to do a BM? And I decided I'm going to try to get a musical theater degree. But then with all of the auditions and stuff, accompanying myself became kind of easier. And also a thing that made me different and a thing that was in my wheelhouse, but it felt like such an obstacle for so long that suddenly when it turned into something that I could capitalize on or something that was actually a plus, it was kind of a weird shift of mindset for me that suddenly I didn't actually have to choose. I could do both. And it makes me feel like I don't have to be just one kind of artist. I can be, all my art can happen through whatever medium I want it to come through.
You tie into like the question of like, when you are playing either in a pit or in an orchestra or something like that versus embodying a character and how those are different, you know? And when you speak to that difference of like the elevation of it, of like trusting that technique is going to be there. I'm not a dancer by any stretch of the imagination. But I imagine, as having worked with many dancers, that like you have to have a good foundation in your body to be able to trust that your body's just going to do the thing, and the rest of you could be thinking about the story you're telling, right?
You can't be I think this is my left leg.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't be like, I don't remember what, I mean, that's what rehearsal is for, sure. But rehearsal is really for learning the specific moves or the specific music or the specific text or the story of that piece, not like we're starting from scratch learning how to move our bodies. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So as actor musicians, at least for myself, I think having that foundation of comfort, not just like understanding of an instrument or like, I think I know where the chords go. And I think that's the difference between of different actor musicians. Not saying one's better than another, but like there's certainly different types of iterations of actor musicians that I see. There's a type of a person that's like, oh, they are competent as a performer, and then they are also competent as a musician or singer or whatever else they're doing at the same time. But I think what we're talking about as maybe the goal or like the striving for is like when you're able to storytell without thinking about all those mechanics, that all that stuff just like melts away out of your brain because it's all second nature, and we're not thinking about the mechanics of it, and we're able to like the same way an actor is just existing, that you can do that with all this other stuff at the same time.
What John Doyle always says is that what's coming out of my violin is another voice, and it might even be contradictory to what my mouth is singing or saying, but it is absolutely, it's not just something I'm doing to accompany myself.
Yes. It's more subtext.
It's a subtext. It's it's another part of the character that I'm playing. And, you don't know what that is at first. And maybe even the person who's orchestrated it doesn't quite know, but you, as you're playing, you're like, oh, like I'm playing this melody line here because I always wished I had, there's always like a reason. And that's one of the magical things about doing actor musician shows is you very seldom will get bored because it's so rich. And it's almost like it's not 3 dimensions. It's 4 dimensions. It's another aspect of finding a character, telling the story. Yeah. And it's so rewarding and kind of hard to explain.
Well, there's this whole other thing of like, I'm sure actors that are if you're just an actor, if you're just embodying a character, we talk a lot about like, how does the character move or walk, or what kind of voice do they have, or how do they gesture, what body do they live in, where's their center of gravity, and like, how do we change ourselves? But also there's that other question of like, well, then how do they play this instrument? Because I might play the violin like a classically trained violinist, but is the character classically trained? Are they just sawing away at it with, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think the ability to kind of have the character come through your instrument, not just what you're playing, but how we're playing it, because if, and I'm sure yourself as a classical musician, not every character you play is going to be a classical pianist, so having that flexibility of not just, are you an actor that plays, but you're an actor that's morphable.
Oh yeah.
In the same way you are as an actor, are you morphable as a musician?
Well, do you find this? Like I find that if you want to have like actor musicians, I always used to say that we're nerds. We're total like multitasking, overachieving nerds. We do and we're always like, yes, sure, I'll try that.
Yeah, I've never done that. I'll try it. Sure.
Most actors are that way in a way, but like we have, I've definitely been, got myself in trouble. I'm like, sure, I can play drum kit. And then I do, to different degrees, but it's like that idea of like not saying no.
I think I am in a place where I feel, because of where the piano origins for myself started, have a deep fear of being bad, because I don't remember being bad at the piano because I was so young, and it was just like, you're going to practice. And that is the rules, and the discipline of learning a new instrument, and the discipline of learning something and getting over the ego thing of, I'm bad at it right now. But if I can, it's part of learning it. Like, I think that is something that, as I move farther into being an actor too, I think process is really exciting to me. Like the prospect of being bad, but becoming better is exciting.
Like watching yourself, woodshed a passage, and 24 hours later you pick it. Like, it's always like, I spend a couple hours on something, put it away, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and it's right there. It's right there in my hands.
The first time I got a bend in the harmonica, I can't even replicate that kind of joy. I was like, it was the most amazing surprise. And again, it was just like being bad at it and being okay with being bad at it until one day you're a little better.
Because it's just, it's more tools in our toolboxes, right? Like ultimately we're all just there to tell a story and embody it and express it through our bodies or our voices or our, our instruments. And the better you are, or the more instruments you have to bring to the table, is like the more tools in your toolkit. And if the better the more facility you have with them, then the more expressive you are. And it's
styles
just,
too. Like we were already talking about it, but I do country and rock and classical and, music theater and and being able to have confidence in whatever style
because I never knew that you could like sing and play violin at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
And you can. It just takes a lot of practice.
For real. But I think those kinds of things are scary, especially as a classical musician.
That's a hard one.
I was stuck in a lot of boxes. And I think seeing other people break them down, I was like, oh, there are no rules. They're just suggestions. Rules are just things that have come before.
Yes. See, and hearing this makes me so happy.
When you do those kinds of shows, when you guys have done these kinds of shows, how do you handle the contract language? Because right now in the equity union world, there is very little real strict guidelines of how that's handled, right?
So
how do you handle it?
Specific on Broadway in the production contract, but regionally it's almost non-existent. Yeah. Most of the time I start with just saying, hey, instrument rental, what's that going to be? And and there's nothing in the contract. You just have to
got to work with them.
You just have your agent say, hey, by the way, this is how much my client's violin is rented for per week, So that's like the first thing. And that I know, it gets expensive if you do other stuff regionally. So I usually don't really, try to mess around too much regionally, but, and even off Broadway, cause it's hard to afford. Yeah. But on the other hand, you're also like, wait, there's 5 of us on stage. We're the whole orchestra.
We're saving you a lot of money.
We're saving you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because I love doing it and I want to do it. And it isn't just to save money. It isn't. However, it just feels like there should be something.
Yeah.
And I know, and the other tricky thing with a production contract, Because when I started with Cabaret, we were not even production contract at first. So
Oh, wow.
I know. And then with company, they started to talk about like understudies and what you would make if you understudy, because in the 802 contract,
It's the musicians
there isn't
union.
anything about understudying.
Yep.
You hire
Your own sub.
a sub and you have them come in and they don't get paid for rehearsal, right?
No.
So that's the tricky thing about being an actor musician, is that overlap. If you have, because there are usually 3, 4, 5, 6 people who are backstage understudying 4 people, and that might be 12 instruments. You know what I mean? And all that time, and they could just be paid minimum,
Yeah. And sometimes in my
which
experience,
is crazy.
yeah. And sometimes you don't even have the understudies, because it can be really hard as someone like us who can come to the table and say, hey, I'm really valuable for a production because I play all these instruments.
Right.
That makes you very exciting and desirable. But it also means what happens if you're
How
sick?
do you understudy you?
Because this production I just got off of yesterday, I had a whole thing. I didn't get sick, where everything's fine, but I'm fine now. But like, there was a big discussion of what happens if Alex is out. And it's like, okay, we have to have someone cover the acting track. We have to have someone conduct the band. We have to have someone play violin. Someone has to play viola. Someone has to play accordion.
Or you cancel a show.
And they're like 5 people to cover one person. So I think the fact that there's more people coming into this industry that can do what we do means that our jobs are now safer. Because there's more likelihood that there might be people that can do the stuff that I can do that could actually cover me, so that I don't feel that pressure to go, I don't feel good. I don't know if it's safe for me to go in today.
Yeah.
And they go, well, you have to go on because we don't have 5 people to cover one person,
Yeah.
So I think as this career path develops, as we get more people coming into this, and as people get more excited and see that there are theaters that are doing this work, that this is valid, exciting, financially supported work that is worth your time, worth your energy, then hopefully that means that, people like us don't feel pressure to that show must go on, that toxic feeling, which I think can be really dangerous to a point,
Can be, for sure.
Yeah.
On the other end of it, I as far as like what people who are not actor musicians, I sort of want to tell them sometimes. I was doing a reading of this singer-songwriter who was, and I was playing guitar for everything, and we only had like 5 days or something, and I didn't know any of these, 20 songs or whatever that I was learning and singing. And but I don't, like we were talking about, I love jumping in and failing and like doing as much as I can. And I remember at the end, or before the final presentation of the reading, they were like, wow, we're asking so much of you. And I was like, that's my jam. Like, that's what I do. I don't, it's okay.
Yeah.
It may not be perfect in 4 days, but you know what I mean? Like, just kind of going, like, respecting that my process is a lot of like kamikaze, like I'm just going to go for something.
Running at a wall.
Yeah.
And if you can let go of the perfection, I definitely can. And, so the process, I think, is a little more like, can be scary for somebody to watch sometimes.
Especially if you're in a position of you're supporting, like if they're building a show around you, like as an actor musician, that like a lot of the times I'll play, violin or more parts that are laying on top of something else, either like an accordion, a guitar, a piano. That's going to be a foundational chordal instrument, and other instruments that I play like mandolin, ukulele, flute, violin, viola. Those are floating on top of it with like lyrical lines or fills, right? Exactly. But when you're playing something like keyboard, like guitar, like accordion, like you don't have as much of a luxury, generally speaking,
I think that's true.
to have that process of like, cool, I just got this music. We're in process. The music's working. And like, so I need to
remember.
Exactly. Because now they're building, the other actors have to be able to like, we need a set tempo. We need this to be, so to understand that we're not tracks, and it's different than when you hire a professional like pit orchestra that's going to show up and just be like, we're playing what's on the page, and it's never going to change. That actor musicians require, there's a different process that has, we're starting from scratch generally, and to have that ability to support your artists as a theater, to say like, hey, we have doubles of the instruments that you can practice outside of rehearsal hours, or we have a separate rehearsal space so that if they're doing lighting tech or, loading the set in or whatever, that you have a space that you can rehearse in.
Yeah.
So that the show can develop at the pace that the hope is that it will.
That support, it's about like a baseline knowledge of what is like needed, even before like all of those things, the things that maybe like a director isn't thinking about because they've never worked that way before. Sure. So like having a consult, someone who is from that world or knows kind of already a little bit of what can fully support the instrumentals that they need. Cause it's all fine and dandy to say like, let's do this. And that's the vision. But then logistically, does this space like acoustically fit that? Like there's so many other things that need to be thought about that I think I want more of it. And I think there needs to be, I wouldn't feel comfortable like going into a space knowing that nobody has ever done that before.
But I think there's always yes. And there's always going to be that first time.
Sure.
For everyone either doing their first actor musician show, or a theater producing their first one, or a director doing it for the first time, or a music director going like, I think I'm going to be working with actor musicians and not traditional pit. Like there's going to be a learning curve for everything. And I think the more we do it, the more not only do theaters know what they have to prepare for, generally speaking, every show is a little different, but also us as performers, as actor musicians ourselves, or maybe teaching the next generation or telling our friends or whatever, we know what to advocate for.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from experience. It comes from either our own knowledge, experiential knowledge, or past and shared knowledge, but certainly this is one of the more newer types of theater that's being put out there.
In terms of putting your body as an instrument too, through all of that, like the PT that needs to happen if you're in a
theater that's lucky enough to provide it.
Exactly.
I do remember, company was a lot of playing and a lot of sitting while we watched it, and that was hard. But cabaret was more playing, and I remember having injuries that I had PT for. I had to have it because like you said, like a lot of people who play in pits will sub out at least once a week. So they only play 7 shows a week, and eight is just like one too many, and especially. I mean, yes, piano, but like we are like so
like what you were doing with that
the bass.
Upright bass, like
especially if you're switching instruments, your body changes a lot. You know,
remember switching is actually a good thing, I think, as opposed to playing the same instrument
repetitive
the whole
stress
time,
injury,
which is what I when I was in cabaret, it was just finally I had a lot of injuries. From 8 shows.
I remember when we were doing Cyrano together in 2007. I remember when we started the tech process, I was in a neck brace. I don't know if you remember that, but I was in a neck brace for about 3 days because I was playing flute, violin, mandolin, a bunch of stuff. But my neck was constantly going from here to here, and I wound up pinching a nerve. Yeah. And thank God we were on a production contract that says, hey, you have to provide PT for your performers. Hey, you have to take care of us. And they did. They sent me to like a sports medicine doctor, and on our dinner breaks, I would be rushed to the Upper West Side. I would do like 45 minutes of body work, and then I'd come back down, put my neck brace on, and join the cast.
Yeah, because violin, the way it's like so asymmetrical is like so
and everyone's body is different, but ultimately, I was really lucky that injury happened on that show. Because if that happened on a regional production or an off-Broadway contract that doesn't require that PT or that theater doesn't have that budget, then you are just on your own to figure it out.
Cancel the show, or you just
and then you hope that there's someone on the understudy track that plays all 17 of your instruments.
Done it, but they were but they didn't want to pay me as an understudy.
There you go. So that's always the thing, right?
Yeah.
But it does require a level of care of your actor musicians. I don't know if theaters always are aware of that. The same way there would be hazard pay if you were on a rake stage or doing like high falls or doing fight choreography, So there's a similar element of we are using our bodies. I've got an accordion strapped to the front of my body. I'm carting around a bass, I'm hunched over a piano, whatever it may be. That's the next step is sure, we're really excited to have you part of the storytelling process, but also how can we take care of you?
If you were me, if you were the oldest one in the group, what would you now tell other actor musicians about doing these kind of shows? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think I know, but I also,
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything you want to?
Well, I keep going back to the thought of process. of showing up day one and being the worst at the job that you've ever been, and how that is probably, that means there's possibility. And I've learned so much from the other actor instrumentalists that I've been in cast with, like, because it takes different things to do every instrument, obviously, but I'm learning and I'm listening my peers and watching them be amazing, and also watching them fall on their face. Like, I think that would be probably what I would say is, like, learn the instruments that inspire you. Like, think about the sounds that inspire you, that you like to hear, and let that direct where your joy comes from, like, and just continue to learn and be a student.
I love that. Yeah. What about you?
It's a similar angle. I think as my training as an actor, there's a lot of focus on truth, right? There's a lot of like, well, there's no right or wrong choice. It's just like the honest choice, you know?
Okay.
At least in my experience of my training, right? So I grew up with a lot of that being reinforced as an artist, of like, yes, you're serving the function of the story and all that kind of stuff. You have to make sure you're in line with that. But ultimately, the choice that you make as an actor has to be in line with what's your honest take, you know, like really tap into this. And that's going to be where we start, you know? And as a musician, as a classical musician, it was, well, start with what's on the page. What does the composer tell you to do? Now that's mezzo piano. You have to respect that. That's a crescendo. You have to respect that. And if I remember as a young musician in high school, when I was really starting to find my voice as a musician, I would get a lot of pushback from orchestras that I played with, because they're like, well, you're actually not doing what's on you're actually doing something else, and you're splashing different colors that aren't. And I was like, yeah, but that's what
like.
Exactly. So I think as an actor musician, that's where I get a lot of joy, is out of having, now I have my own colors that are just as valid as my own truth as an actor. And when I do play in like a pit, or when I'm only part of a band, or when I play like when I'm a session musician or a gigging musician and someone hands me you know, this is your part, then like, yeah, you're doing that thing. But as an actor musician, because we have stories to tell, and now I'm expressing it with my body, I just feel like I get to bring more of myself to those instrumental elements of a character, of a performance, that I don't always when I'm just playing like a classical concert, you know, and I'm playing like
with
Bach,
the script, you know? and sheet music, that it's all a blueprint anyway.
Yeah, it's all starting place.
You know, like there's even with text, with any kind of dialogue, there's always going to be subtext. And that's kind of the same thing of sheet music, that maybe this forte is here, but what is the context around the forte that you can then excavate more truth from it.
In general, theaters are full of people that want to help, you know, like we're all doing this. No one's doing this to get rich. No one's doing this to get, you know, famous on TV generally, or on Broadway or wherever. But people are doing this because we love it, because we love the community of storytellers, because we love the spirit of collaboration. So I think understanding that while we may be in a type of field as actor musicians that is a little bit relatively more new to our industry, you know, advocating for what we need or what our process looks like on a very individual basis, you know, because my process might be different from yours, might be, you know, and advocating allows, I think, other people that are in recurring positions like stage management or theater owners or producers or directors to have a better sense of what's coming down the pike with maybe other actor musicians.